GM fam, a big knock against DeFi lately has been, why would people bridge their funds from TradFi to DeFi when TradFi is getting pretty good yields lately? If you happen to have the privilege of owning dollars, you can just park them in bank accounts and get like about 2.5%. The official interest rate's like 5%. So there's actually good yields in regular finance. That being said, a number of people have reasons for using DeFi. Maybe they prefer the composability, the fungibility, the 24/7 uptime. And as a result, there are still DeFi yields if you look for them. But the issue is high yield, high risk. So how might you evaluate these risks? That's the subject of today's article, in which we go through all the high yielding pools on Curve Finance and discuss some of the risk factors that we're aware of. Just because we miss or don't mention some risk factors doesn't mean they don't exist. So of course, just use this as a guide for doing your own research. And of course, never trust gorgeous strangers on the internet. Always talk to people who are offering actual financial advice, not this guy, a registered financial advisor or something like that. So that aside, what might you look at when you're evaluating risks on DeFi pools, particularly curve pools? So one of the things to look at is the depeg history. Does this token tend to stay at $1 consistently, in which case you can maybe be more likely to withdraw when you need it, or does it depeg? USDD saw this. They have been offering very high returns, but in June, they depegged pretty badly, but then they recovered it. So take a look at the depeg history. Also, look at the balances of the pools. It's not necessarily a bad thing if the pool's imbalance. Some are doing it intentionally, like JPEG's PUSd. They intentionally imbalance their pool so that the users who acquire the PUSd token by lending NFTs to them are able to reap those higher benefits at a discount when they deposit in the Curve pool. And similarly, LUSD goes the other direction, and it tends to depeg above $1 pretty frequently, in that users are often scrambling to pay off their liquidity protocol loans. And when they do so, they have a bum rush for LUSD and tend to drain LUSD from these pools, which could be advantageous if you want to perhaps take advantage of that profit there. So be aware of these imbalances and understand the context behind them is the important thing. Another thing to understand the context of is the TVL. So if the TVL is very, very low, this is perhaps it's itself a risk sign that no one wants to deposit in this pool. Or if it's very low, it just might be the case that the pool can become imbalanced very quickly. So if very low TVL is a red flag to consider. Another thing just to look at is the TVL low but increasing rapidly? When this happens, your yield gets diluted. People see these sky-high APYs. They're like, oh my God, 3, 4, 5 figures. But once it goes from $5,000 TVL to $100,000 TVL, this comes back down to earth pretty quickly. So if you're seeing the yield shoot up, maybe, if you're seeing the TVL shoot up, maybe the yield's about to shoot down. So don't expect that the APYs that are published on any DeFi site are likely to hold. That being said, there are some that have held pretty well. So take a look at that history if you can find access to it and see if these pools actually tend to yield pretty consistently over time. Last thing to look at is, of course, the crypto risks team. Their Substack is great. They've been authoring a number of fantastic reports on all the different curve pools that are applying for gauges. So some of the recent ones that they've talked about is USDN. They're actually recommending that the gauge be stripped and that it move to a V2 pool. So maybe it doesn't make sense to jump into that pool, even though it's been kind of offering good yields for a while. You might just need to move in just a few minutes anyway. So worth being aware of. They've also written an extensive report on Inverse Finance's Dollar token and described how the protocol is trying to pay off some of the bad debt there. So it's worth being aware of. Even fan favorite Frax, which is of course part of the Frax USDC based pair, that is a component of a lot of these new pools and offering very high rewards. The team has talked with them about the multi-sig, and they also wrote a previous report just going through the whole architecture. So worth being aware of all these things. Again, none of this financial advice, just some tips and tools you might use as you're evaluating how to perhaps close out Q4 2022 and find some good yield someplace. High risk, high reward. Do your own research. Stay safe, friends.